All right, we are ready to get started. Thank you everybody for coming to the WordPress session of today. I'm actually happy to see more than one person. We'll start with a round of introductions. You want to go first?
Sure, my name is Dmitry. I work as a front-end engineer at an agency called 10up. And today we'll talk about WordPress, very unexpectedly for Drupal conference.
My name is Jesse, and I work for Evolving Web. We are primarily a Drupal company, as you might know because you're here. I'm also the WordPress lead and the solutions architect at Evolving Web, so I deal a lot with all of our WordPress clients. So what we're going to talk today about, basically, and actually go back to our initial slide, basically just about how we build WordPress sites today, because some people that might not have seen WordPress in the last 6-ish years might not really be familiar with how much it has changed, which is a lot. It's more or less a new platform. We could consider that now. So we want to talk about that and just kind of give you a glimpse into that world. So before we do that, we want to kind of go through maybe some of the sites that we can build with WordPress, because there might be a bit of an idea that maybe it's only primarily used for small websites, small blogs, and yeah, it started out that way. This is the original default theme for WordPress. Just a very simple blog. If you see a website that looks like this, you can be pretty sure it's WordPress. But you can also build other sites, like large tech news sites. This one is actually built with something that we're going to talk more about today, which is the site editor in WordPress, also known as the full site editor, part of the whole Gutenberg project that I'm sure some people have heard about. So it's really kind of exciting to see such a large, well-known brand using this new technology today. We've also built some engineering, university, higher education websites based on WordPress. This one we built in a different way that we're also going to talk about today. So we're going to kind of try to cover these two different ways of building WordPress sites. Of course, there are many ways, but we're going to talk about two different ways. When we build a WordPress site, we're doing a lot of work at the theming layer. So I want to talk about a little bit about the ways that we can build a WordPress theme. The old way kind of is the classic theme way. It's kind of what some people might think of when you're thinking about a WordPress theme, and that's primarily using PHP on the back end and typical JavaScript and CSS and whatnot, using the loop and the hooks, the queries and filters and actions that maybe you're familiar with if you know anything from that ecosystem. Pretty standard stuff, but we still use a lot of that today, but that's sort of one way to build websites. Now there's more of a block theme, the block theme way, and that's what is really, if you think about that idea, that project Gutenberg, that whole, which kind of encapsulates multiple things. This is now what we're thinking about in that era, and that Gutenberg as a block editor came out in WordPress 5.9, which is 2008. 5.0, which is 2008. The site editor, which is what powers the block themes, came out in WordPress 5.9, which the year that came out is escaping me. I'm going to say 2021-ish?
Roughly,
yeah. And so that's mainly building your website in a very visual way. You could think of it kind of like Webflow or Squarespace or Wix, those kinds of more visual websites. There's been plugins in the ecosystem for this for a long time, but now it's built into core. We can do that all without additional subscriptions, additional fragmentation in the ecosystem, additional potential performance or security concerns. It's all built into the platform now. And so these are built primarily with the block editor, with HTML and configuration files and sprinkling of CSS and PHP where you need to. That all hasn't gone away, it's all still there. And so we're going to go basically right into some demos, more or less, to show what this actually looks like. I think that's the most interesting thing, is to actually see it and not so much talking about it. Oops. Switch tabs here. So this is a design, not a website yet, but this is a design of a website that we are currently building for a US-based university. So that's what we're working towards. And we're doing this using the full site editor. What this means, actually just say the site editor. It was originally called full site editor and it got renamed. I still trip up a few times. And so when we do that, we're basically building everything through a very visual way. We're creating the navigation visually. We're creating these blocks, this hero section visually. We're editing this text visually right in the editor. We don't have to write code or even create components with code. We can do it all through the editor. There's asterisks on everything, of course, which we'll expand on some more as well. So I'm going to go down into actually talking about, I've used a bunch of terms that may or may not make sense yet, talking about blocks. And so what is a block? A block could be something as simple as this primary button. It's just a block on a page, right? It has some configuration options here. We can do various things to control it. So that's a very simple example of a block. We can see some other examples of blocks. We have different heading levels. We have different types of buttons, icons, for example. And one of the cool things is because this is much more visual, I can actually go and, let's say, change the color of this one. Or I could change the color of this one. You see I have a lot of options. In fact, I can...
Very flexible.
Very flexible. I can pick a truly arbitrary color. Let's go with like something that's just off-white, that's horribly inaccessible. And we can do code blocks, so everything is a block, more or less. And if I keep going, we have some more capabilities to allow us to build sites. We have something called block styles, and we have a primary button and a secondary button. And this is defined just by selecting your different button styles. So you can very easily, we as the developers have defined those different styles, and then the content editors can very easily toggle between those and see the results in real time. We also have block variations, where we have our primary and secondary, but then we can also define, maybe we want one that's a wide version or a full version, which maybe that's not exactly full, but it's it's wider and fuller than the normal ones. It's got more padding basically, so we can start to customize those. The nice thing about that is I haven't actually showed the block inserter. These ones actually show up in the inserter. So if I were to type in button, we're going to get our wide and full buttons here, as opposed to just a button, in which case we have to then select the secondary. Now we have these base blocks that we have the titles, we have the buttons, we have text, we have all those things. Now we have what's called a pattern. So we'll create a pattern, and this is where we start to think about maybe like a component, if you're familiar with like design systems and whatnot. So this turns into a pretty typical component that you probably see on every other website. We can create this and make it a reusable section. We can even change it. I want to change this here because I think I actually want to say WordPress has changed a lot. I think Drupal has since 2008, 18. We have buttons, everything right there. And so that's defined as a pattern, and I could now add that again and change that all as I need to on new pages. If I keep going here, now we have the next version of that, which is a synced pattern. Now this is where we start to have maybe it's content that's reusable, like contact information, for example, that's on every single page. You want to change that contact information, you don't want to have to change it on every single page. So you create a sync pattern, and then that way you change it in one place, and it sort of like propagates through to every other place. And that's really interesting, because now you'll see that I can edit the original one. And let's just say I want to change the color here. I can change the whole color scheme of that whole button, or that whole section. And when I go back, I lost my scrolling place, but you notice both of those change. Those are two separate instances of that pattern. They have different content though. It's just that the underlying definition is the same. So the image is different, the text is different, the heading is different. And you notice when I'm clicking it, you see that subtle, it's even more subtle on the screens there, little sort of purple hue that is showing me the different areas where I can, actually if I undo my change, yeah, that's better. The different areas where I can change content. So that's now actually a synced pattern, and I've also enabled an override on that pattern. So I can now make changes in that pattern, even though it's synced. Some parts of it stays the same across every instance. Some other parts I've decided I want to be able to change. And this is all done right in the editor. I didn't have to go into code to create this pattern. I didn't have to go into code to create these overrideable sections. It's all done right natively in the editor. And you'll see here on the side I have the different sections that are changeable as well. One of the coolest things that just come out in WordPress 6.5 and then enhanced in 6.7, which came out just a few weeks ago, is this idea of block bindings, which is a pretty simple idea. But again, the important thing is we're connecting it all back to this visual building interface. So this paragraph of text, I've went and said, I want to associate it with an attribute, and associate it with a piece of content that I just called Dyck. Like a magazine has the intro text of a piece of content or something like that. So that is completely editable here. I can change it all, and what actually happens, that's linked back to a custom field or a post meta in the database. So I'm changing it, and it seems as though it's changing it right in the content of this page, but it's actually saving it back to a separate field that's usable in queries, that's usable to place in different areas of the website. It starts to create that structure that we usually look for, especially for thinking about the Drupal ecosystem.
And it has that hue again, the purple one.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. There's a few little subtle differences there where it's showing you that it's actually connected to something else. And all I had to do, I could just redo that again if I add a, you don't need to. So this just created a paragraph, and I can go back to my attributes, content attribute, and the deck, and now it's the same thing there. And as I change that, you can notice it changing up top, because it's syncing it back to that main content store. So now to think a little more about the development side of this, how do we actually build these block themes? I'm building a lot of it visually, but there is sort of a code element to that. There is a theme configuration file, and it looks kind of like that. It's just a basic JSON file that you define in your theme. It's got a bunch of different properties. Once all those properties start to fill out, it becomes a very, very large file. So you'll notice I'm not going to include the whole file. It does get quite large. So I've kind of truncated some sections just for ease of seeing it all. So here's what an H1 might look like, specifying a bunch of different things here. We're using some CSS custom properties to make things a little more reusable. WordPress creates a whole bunch of those. We can create a custom color palette, which you'll notice we have this theme section over here that displays a whole bunch of different theme colors. I've just included a few of those, what those look like. Oh, that's a duplicate section. But that all can be created as well. I'm showing the configuration files, but there is also a style editor. That's where you would go to actually set all those values. There's some things that maybe you can't set in that style editor that are a little more advanced that you'd want to drop into the JSON file for. But in general, you can go into the style editor and start to set your typography. This is the Mayorov that I set above. So you can create all of that right in here, and then it saves that back to your theme, and then you can save that JSON file when the time comes. And so that's you can probably start to see, especially when looking at the color palette, there's a whole bunch of colors in there. You probably don't want all those options for every case. So it gives us a lot of flexibility, but it also gives us, as we saw in my example of a horrendously inaccessible color combination, a lot of problems that could come up for, just as people are editing content, that we might start to see that flexibility starting to cause some issues. So that's when we start to get into some more maybe custom blocks or customizing the configuration even more. So that's what I'm going to pass it over to Dmitry to talk more about that.
Thank you. We're doing the Zoom thing, so we don't have to swap the HDMI cables. Perfect. So, like Jesse said, we have a ton of options. We have a ton of options in WordPress where, you can, with modern WordPress, you can control pretty much every aspect of your website, from header to footer, from colors, font sizes, spacing, and whatnot. And That's very powerful because you can build a lot of projects with it without using code, without knowing how to write CSS, HTML, JavaScript. You can just get into the editor and with low-code solution create a project like very quickly. And that's super cool, but not all the projects are built like that. There are projects that have different goals. So I'll give you an example. If a site like TechCrunch, or a site like New York Times, or a site like Wired, I don't know, have a ton of options for a single paragraph, for example, the editor experience, the dashboard, can be overwhelming for editors. Like if the goal is to just publish content, just like get in there, write the blog post, and get it out, then you probably don't want to think about every spacing detail, the color, and whatnot. So like that's where we get into like a different type of sites with WordPress. Or another example where we have clients who come to you with very strong brand guidelines, with very strong design systems, where they actually already thought about every single spacing token, every single design token, every single color combination. It's all accessible already, like you just need to implement it. So you don't want to give this flexibility control to the people, the editors who will be creating content. They just need to get in there and create the article, create the press release, or any other type of content as quickly as possible, and make it as consistent as possible with the existing design system or systematic design or previous articles. So with those types of projects, we actually take a completely different, approach to how we build websites with WordPress, and we, instead of providing that customizability, providing that flexibility, we trim it down, we make it strong guardrails. So I want to talk a little bit more about the tools we have for those types of projects. So the approach I usually take for projects like that is sort of like, it's two phases, where we first take a look at what WordPress gives us out of the box. We see we have blocks, we have patterns, we have the styles and combinations and whatnot, and we look at our design system, we look at our goals and see, okay, we need this, we need that, and we probably don't need a whole bunch of stuff. So in those cases, we, like I call the first phase is disable phase. We just go through all the API, like all the tools that we have in WordPress, and disable them one by one. So I'm gonna just quickly go through the tools that are available for us to create a project like that. So, and again, yeah, like after the disable phase, we build on that foundation, we build on that clean setup with minimal distractions. So, theme JSON is amazing, like we just saw in just his demo, that we can customize pretty much any aspect of the theme, but it's also great for disabling the features that we're not using. So, like if you see on the code here, like all the features are set to false, and that's gonna change the appearance of most of the blocks in WordPress. So let's see on the left here, we have the customized version where we disable most of the features, and on the right, that's the default 2025 theme that has all the options for color combinations, typography, and whatever. So super useful for when you want to create very rigid guardrail experience. Then we can also disable unused core blocks. So most likely your project will need every single core block that it's out there. So like there's a ton of very embed styles. So like, do you need embed for every single video provider? Probably not. You just want to limit them to YouTube, Vimeo, and other ones. So there's a filter in WordPress called allow block times all, where you can provided the blocks that you want to keep in the editor, and the rest will not be available in the inserter. So in this example, I'm limiting into paragraph, image, heading, list, and that's it. And here you can see all blocks in the default theme. So on the left, I'm scrolling and I'm seeing everything. And this is an example of how limited it could be. So like you can limit the experience to just the blocks you need. Very curated approach. Then also, like even when we pick the blocks that we need, they still come with a bunch of variations in terms of a bunch of options in terms of how you can style them. So for example, image block has two styles out of the blocks. It's default image, and it has a rounded version where it looks like a circle. If your design system has that, perfect. And if not, then there's no reason for that style to be there. So WordPress has an API to disable styles and register new styles. So in that case, we would use that API to disable it. There's a thing in WordPress called supports. It's a common set of features that are that could be enabled for multiple blocks, and one of them is alignments. So, as you know, like most of the blocks have a center column at in the middle of the screen for paragraphs. That's typically like 50 to 75 characters in it. But images don't need to be that narrow; they can span outside. So, like for that, WordPress has a feature called wide and full width, but it's enabled on multiple blocks by default. And if, for example, you don't need that feature on the heading block, like there's an API to disable that. You don't need to read all the code, but like the main line here is that you can just take over the default supports object and place the empty array there, and it will disable the alignments in the editor. So this is the default version of the heading block. See how you can pick between default, wide width, full width, and like if we disable that, it becomes like we no longer have that option. So and then once we've gone through all those steps to disabling everything that we don't need, we can actually get into the build phase, like to the fun part, building blocks. And I want to talk a little bit more about how to decide when to choose to build your project with core blocks or custom blocks. With custom the benefit of using custom blocks, you control the markup fully. It's like you create the end markup that browser will render on the front end, and that means that you have full control of the accessibility. Well, minus the, let's say, like if the editors forget to add the alt attribute or like add inaccessible content, but you fully control what markup is rendered in the browser. Because you're building custom blocks, you almost fully control the UI. So it means that you can choose which aspect of the block users can and cannot control. And I will demo one of the blocks to just in a little bit to show how flexible and rigid at the same time it could be. Because we limit the amount of controls, it's really hard to break. So it means that most of the time, like with custom blocks, you decide for the editor what, as an engineer or like as a team of engineers and designers, how the block should behave, and that's a benefit over core blocks where you have a lot of control and you can easily break the site if break visually. I mean, if it's not if it doesn't align with the design system. So. And patterns, like Jesse demoed, super powerful tool in the sense that you can build patterns built just purely out of core blocks. You can build patterns with custom blocks or a combination of both. And patterns could be part of the UI, like part of the page, or it can be a full page, just like start to finish. So it simplifies the editing experience tremendously. And I will demo that in just a moment. Okay, yeah, super cool demo. Okay. Okay, so here I have the website for like one of our recent projects. A pretty simple article from what it looks like in the beginning, but let me replace the hero section here. So I'm just going to go into the inserter and put one of our custom blocks here. So let's start with this guy. It's a custom post header block that the only thing that you can control with this block is, let me close up here. The only thing that you can control with this block is you can add the title, you can add the excerpt, you can show the category, you can show the author, you can show the date, or you can hide them. And there's no customization in terms of how it looks because this has already been decided. We have a component like that in the design system, so we render this block just like that. But we understand that for most of the project, this could be fine, but some clients still need more flexibility in the sense that they want to present different content in different way. So for that sense, instead of providing customization for a single block, we just create 6 smaller ones that do just one thing but do it really well. So WordPress has also this tool called Transforms API that allows us to easily swap blocks between each other. So for this project, we created 6 post headers, and I can easily swap between those like so. So like if I didn't like that post header, I can swap to this one, or swap to this one, or go ahead and swap to a slightly different version, like that. And yeah, like it's really hard to break because it's already styled. The CSS comes is used on the front end and in the back end. Now let me just quickly demo the power of the patterns as well. So, like I said, we can create parts of the page with patterns. In WordPress, you have this 3 tabs when you go to the inserter. And for patterns, for this particular project, we actually like categorize them so the editors know exactly which patterns do what. So like we have cards, we have carousels, content rivers. Content rivers is like probably the most fun one because they're really visually cool. So for example, if I want to insert a section that looks like this, I just click and I have it on the page like that. And as you notice, like if I open the outline here, we have just one block, but under the hood, it's multiple blocks that are styled like that. So this gives us a great starting point for creating layouts. And this is again, like we fully design this component. So the only thing that the editors can change is like swap the content, swap the images, and it will look the same. But we don't have to stop there. So let me just delete everything. And yeah, let me just delete everything here, like all the blocks, and show you how you can create a full page from scratch. Like we have the category here called templates, and it's just like it's not WordPress template, but a page level pattern. So like if we wanted to create, let's say we wanted to create a product spotlight page with a hero at the top and a few product demos like that. You do it with one click, and then you just need to go and update the content, and that's it. Super fast. Thank you.